So I used to be based in Hong Kong, looking after the kayak and open table brand for marketing and also e-commerce. Now, I joined GoCity in 2019 and looking after the APAC customer source markets. Now, I was tasked to grow APAC customers in general, including mainland China. Now, there's lots of things, obviously, that needed to be done. We had to make sure our product was right. We had to make sure our marketing was done right. And, a few months later, in 2020, we all know what happened, right? However, did that deter us? Absolutely not. We used the time to do proper groundwork in getting the basics right. 4 years on, we have quite a bit of learnings here at GoCity, and I'll be covering how brands can engage the new and emerging Chinese customer. So this data is updated as of this morning. Now, this is our recovery covering the mainland Chinese customer source market as well as the rest of APAC customers. And these are actual GoCity direct website revenue versus 2019. So in January, in the start of this year, definitely we saw, still a long way to go in terms of mainland Chinese recovery versus 2019. And I'm sure a lot of us agree, 2019 was a really good year for the travel industry. It was certainly a really good year for us. In February, we started to see the rest of APAC returning. In fact, it went over 2019. And then we started to see Chinese customers returning as well. It's obviously improved since January. And March, month to date, again, lots and lots of bookings coming in. And I'll get into that in a little bit. And the rest of APAC is coming back. Japan, Korea, Australia, India, they're all coming back. So we're seeing a rapid recovery from all other Asian Pacific countries. And mainland Chinese recovery, yes, it has been slow, but it has been steadily increasing. And FIT travel is the space that we're in, is expected to surge late spring. In terms of the top 10 most booked cities on GoCity.com, in 2019, we were really big in London, New York, Stockholm, Paris, San Diego, and so forth. However, in 2023, and this is bookings made by mainland Chinese customers in 2023, London is still really popular. Our Singapore product, which we launched a couple of months before the pandemic, is the number 2 most popular product amongst Chinese customers. And then Barcelona, we enhanced it during the pandemic. There's also Oahu, which moved up a couple of points. And a couple of products that are still recovering is New York, Paris, and Rome. And, in terms of the top 5 most popular experiences, these are, the main staples. We're very proud to say that, our Singapore product is doing very well. We are poised to have the Singapore product be one of the top 5 of our 30-plus products on GoCity in probably about 1-2 years. And the number 1 most popular attraction is Gardens by the Bay, followed by Singapore Cable Car, Night Safari, Singapore Zoo, and Universal Studios Singapore. And we're actually really excited to have just recently announced our strategic partnership with Mandai Wildlife Group. So there's lots of things happening right there, and we're very excited to have lots of plans to be rolled out this year. In terms of Bangkok, we noticed that the typical attractions are not the most scanned in terms of our product. We do have all the staples, but what we've noticed is that, things like the Thai massage, things like the Meridian dinner cruise, food tours do really well as well. We have the Michelin Street Guide food tour by Tuk Tuk, which is it's actually really popular with Chinese customers. And then in terms of Sydney, again, we do have, of course, we have the Sydney Opera House and, the usual top attractions. But what's really interesting is also stuff like the Blue Mountains Explorer Bus and the semi-outdoor attractions do really well. And in terms of global cities, now these are the top 20 most visited experiences globally, right? Experiences is a new currency. So we noticed that London is still very popular with our Chinese customers. Our London Pass is doing really, really well, and it's still doing really, really well after the pandemic. And then we can see, Gardens by the Bay number 7, Singapore Zoo number 10, and Night Safari number 11. And then a couple of attractions in the west coast of US as well. So In terms of the sightseeing habits, myth versus fact, myth number one, during the pandemic, there was a lot of predictions. There was a lot of speculation, if you will. What we noticed was that not all of them were true. So myth number one, rural and nature-inspired sites will be more popular than urban attractions. Did we see that happening? Not really. Did we offer the outdoor attractions? Of course we did. Now, what we realized was the key landmarks and top attractions remain the most popular. The Statue of Liberty will always be the Statue of Liberty. The Eiffel Tower will always be the Eiffel Tower, will always be iconic. Myth number two, Chinese travelers will be more sensitive towards price changes. Yes and no. Well, what we've seen is they're now purchasing higher SKUs. We offer day passes. We're the biggest sightseeing company in the world, sightseeing pass company in the world. We have, over 75% market share, and we have city passes in all the top cities. We have day passes, 1 day pass, 2 day pass, 3 day pass. They're now buying 3, 4, 5 day passes and above. They are maximizing their value, and they're spending a longer time at each city and attraction. And in terms of, so myth number three, everyone talks about VR. Now, VR is helpful in certain ways, but what we've seen was that nothing beats real-life experiences for Chinese travelers. But VR is used to definitely aid research and bookings because, during the pandemic, everyone was talking about virtual tours, but how many of us really likes virtual tours? Like everyone, nothing matches the real thing. And then myth number four is travel research and booking habits remain unpredictable and volatile. We did see that in 2022. However, in the first 3 months, as we're closing Q1, we have noticed that refund rates and booking lead times for Chinese travelers are now on par with other APAC travelers. So there's booking, yes, they're booking, not so far in advance anymore. They're booking slightly closer, and this going back to pre-pandemic levels. So this is, a couple of myths versus facts that we have. And then in terms of engaging with Chinese travelers, now what your brand can do. Number one, I think this is quite obvious, but most of the brands here have already done this. But for those who are perhaps new or unaware, it is really, really important to localize your global brand. We are a brand that's based out of the UK, so it was a little bit of a task to say, okay, we want to make sure that this brand speaks to the Chinese customer, but also keep in line with our brand guidelines, right? So, in terms of that, this is some of our creatives when it comes to our, display, in terms of our website, and in terms of our trade listing, and we work with all the major trade partners here. So number two, show, tell, and do it well. We have localized social media creatives. We're on all the big platforms. I think we're at least on like 10 platforms, right? And these are some examples by my team from Xiaohongshu. And we localize them as much as possible. We stay towards the brand guidelines. And this is a little bit of work, especially when it comes to the actual content strategy. But it has gone a long way for us. And then we can see we work with a lot of KOLs and influencers around the world. We don't just work with mainland Chinese-based KOLs. We work with them who are based in London, Paris, New York, Singapore, and so forth. And we found that during the pandemic, this is a really nice thing for them to do because, if you're not traveling, you're going to get influencers who are based in a certain city where, they can't travel, so they would love to visit the attraction. So this has worked really well for us. We also work with a couple of partners to do live selling. That has also been quite fruitful for us, and I would encourage brands here who haven't tried it yet to please try it out. Number three, over-communicate your product USPs. Now, it's easier said than done because we think, I just translated my website. I'm doing a great job because I already translated it. Not quite. We call this transcreation. Now, a localized website is great, but we have to make sure that we remember that Chinese customers, especially the emerging Chinese customers, they haven't been outside of China in the last 3-4 years, right? So imagine if, perhaps English is not your local language, you're in a foreign country, using a foreign language, and this is after the pandemic where a couple of months ago, everyone was still wearing masks, right? So we need to make sure our localized website attraction information is hosted inside mainland China. Make sure that the information is up to date as possible. We don't want them getting lost when they're in the middle of a foreign country. We try to aid them as much as possible. We also have a localized blog hosted inside mainland China, which is picked up by Baidu SEO. And then number 4, we explore a wide variety of partners. Now, I can't stress this enough. During the pandemic, we kickstarted collaborations with several content and trade partners. We had a lot of time during the pandemic. I mean, sales wasn't great, right, as we know. So we used the time to build the relationships, to make sure that the content is accurate, relevant, up to the point, and the results in 2022 were astounding. Our partnerships channel incremental revenue grew by 30x versus 2019. And again, I said 2019, we're not looking at a low base. We had a high base in 2019. So lots of great variety of partners. And a lot of people always say, well, look for 1 or 2 strategic partners. We found that not quite true. We found that definitely a wide variety as much as possible works. Number 5, customer service. Aim not just to serve and not just to complete it, but to delight. Make sure your customers are delighted. Make sure your customers are happy. When we work with KOLs, for example, we don't pay for reviews. We don't incentivize reviews. What we do is we encourage them to be as honest as possible, and we're very proud of that. We work with KOLs around the world. You can see here, there's Oahu, there's Singapore, New York, and so forth. And we make sure that they are, they're just delighted. So, it pays a lot. It's a lot of work, but it goes the extra mile, and it worked really well for us. Now, here's a little, some QR codes for our Chinese social media platforms. A lot of people have been talking about Xiaohongshu, Weixin, as well as Weibo. We are also on those platforms, and I do have to agree that Xiaohongshu is actually a really important channel for us. Now, as I close, I would like to just, express how happy I am that the industry is now coming together. And, I'm so excited to see what's in store as we welcome the new China. Thank you very much.